Hello, I'm Chris Flisher, and welcome to Turning of the Wheel, an intelligent, lively discussion on astrology, art, and adventure. Timing is everything, and as the great wheel turns, we are best prepared when we are best informed. Join me as I explore the current planetary alignments and offer insights for coping with change. Educational, informative, enlightening, the Turning of the Wheel is a welcome pause in your daily swirl of constant change. Through intelligent discourse, inspired guests, and educational segments, I will help to enlighten your knowledge of astrology and guide you to accept change as the great wheel of life turns. Call in with your questions and speak with some of the greatest visionaries in the time-tested practice of astrology. Turning of the Wheel, Astrology, Art, and Adventure with Chris Flisher each week on Turning of the Wheel podcast. Hello and welcome to Turning the Wheel. My name's Chris Flisher. As you know, this is a show about astrology, and it also is a show about art and spiritual adventure. And I find that where these three things coalesce is where we find some of the greatest minds in the world of prediction and postulating about where the world is today and sort of how we see the long arc of history and how it impacts us in our daily lives, personally as well as a country and as well as a civilization. We find ourselves in the midst of a great swirl of activity. Before we get started with my wonderful guest who's coming in soonly, I'm going to be telling you about my weekly newsletter, which goes out every Sunday afternoon. In there, you'll see a couple of paragraphs written about the mundane aspects that affect all of us throughout the whole planet. I'll cover those, and then I break it out into individual signs. I encourage you to read your sun sign, your rising sign. If you know your moon, read that as well. Put them together. You'll get a composite idea of what's going to be happening in your world to come. So without further ado, I want to get my guest on. I'm very excited. We are friends. We go back a bit of ways through the astrology circles, and we've done many podcasts and radio shows in the past. Her name is Erin Sullivan, and she is one of the preeminent astrologers on the planet today. She is very unique in this regard, having been practicing astrology for as long as she has. I mean, she's been a professional astrologer for more than 40 years, and she really is what I would call an astrologer's astrologer, meaning that she goes much deeper than the average astrologer does, and sometimes that's really what's helpful, especially when you're talking with somebody who understands the same language. We understand where we're coming from, and how we understand that is through this marvelous language of astrology, which as time goes on, I think becomes more and more accurate and more pertinent to the way we solve our lives and work our way through life. She's also very well known as an author. Many of her books you can be found on Amazon or her website, which is erinsullivan.com. It's ERINSULLIVAN.com, erinsullivan.com. A fabulous person. If you ever get a chance to do a reading with her or purchase her books, I heartily encourage you. We are going to be talking today about eclipses, and Erin is the one person I want to hear from. So, Erin, welcome to Turning of the Wheel. So great to have you back on.
Chris, it's fantastic. I mean, we always have such a great interchange.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find you very stimulating, and I think we do that to each other, which is really important, and because it is a conversation, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, it is. And that's what really comes down to. You know, it's about, and I think conversations have a life unto themselves, in which we can't predict. They do. We can't predict that when we start the conversation. So it's like a ping pong match. It goes back and forth and back and forth. And the stuff that comes out is just remarkable and often amazes us in each and of ourselves at what we come out with. But anyway.
I know. I'm afraid of what we might come
well,
up with.
That's okay. We're just going to be...
Oh, dear. Let's be careful what we engender in the other.
Yeah. But in your years of studying astrology, you obviously have come across many eclipses. And we're headed towards a very powerful and potent eclipse, especially considering the fact that it's going across the United States. And we are in a time of incredible unrest and disillusionment and confusion regarding where we are, what we're doing. We're hearing saber rattling going on in the wings, and we're all nervous about that. And we wonder if this eclipse bodes great harm for us, or does it bode well, or is it all about us, up to us to decide which way we turn our attention? And this is an area I want to delve into you with this in the next show, in our hour here together. Is what do you foresee on the horizon for us? What is your take on this eclipse?
I've really been thinking about it a lot more than other eclipses. I mean, I'm going to start off by saying that in 1970, in the summer, I just had my second child, my little Yeska, and I was living in San Francisco in an apartment, and I was hanging out the diapers, and all of a sudden I noticed that there was an eclipse of the sun. And this is here's the amazing part is my hair literally stood on end. because I didn't know this. I mean, I was so busy with, two babies in diapers that I didn't even know that there was going to be an eclipse.
Huh.
I didn't. So all of a sudden, I was thrown back into my primordial mind, way back into a time of instinctual intelligence. And I want to start off the some of the more like clear cut and delineative stuff about this. But what eclipses do to the collective consciousness and unconsciousness is it takes us back to time out of mind, when the Earth's earliest yet highly evolved peoples were probably, I mean, I know this at least from Chaldea and the Mesopotamians and Michael Bajent's book, which I was the publisher of, called Omens of Babylon. It's been reissued now. But anyway, 40,000 years ago, shall we just jump back a short period of time? Cave dwellers. They were the first artists using pigments of some fixative, and color, so sophisticated that the originals remain brilliant 40,000 years later. These are not savages. These are not unintelligent individuals. However, their relationship with the sky and the earth, upon which they were in a situation in which Mircea Eliade, the great mythographer, called participation mystique, which it's a French word, and it's a beautiful state phrase, participation mystique. And in that phrase, what it means literally is being one in the mystical participation of being alive.
Interesting.
And so, so like me and the bush are not separated in this consciousness. Now, as astrologers, we are, not all astrologers, of course, and like not all scientists, even though, scientists, by the way, are wonderful. I have absolutely nothing but respect for their capacity for distinguishing between their emotional world and their observational world. Now, most of us fall somewhere in between in both of them. And so emotionally, what happens when we see or this kind of experience occurs is that we are in some way amazed. I mean, look at how many people are going to go to this great swath of path of the eclipse across the United States, which we'll get to in a little bit. There will be hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people all along that place, all along that eclipse path. And when we have that kind of gathering, I could go back to Woodstock and say, hey, you have a big gathering, it affects the world.
It does.
You have a big gathering you're participating in the mystique of what's going on. And so we have all these people all sort of herring up to, you're thinking of driving, 14 hours down
I'm going to Tennessee.
Look at,
yeah.
Well, and the one half of my family, my marriage family, my son-in-law's parents, they're taking my teenage daughter on her, to go to university in Portland. And so they've all set it all up to KOA campground. They've got all their glasses. They're going ahead of time, and they're going to watch the eclipse together.
Fabulous.
And so I know, it's amazing. And, like Susie Cox, friend of mine, great astrologer, she's out in Nashville because she likes Nashville. She wants to hang in Nashville for a little while. But they're going to see the eclipse. I mean, people they're making a point of going.
Millions of people, millions, not thousands. This is millions of people are going to be there at this great moment, witnessing a phenomenon that is unlike anything else in the natural natural design of our universe. It's just remarkable.
Speaking, I'm glad you did that, because I didn't want to get too sort of like grandiose, but I do believe it is millions. And now here we are, 40,000 years later, from time out of mind, and I looked back, in doing some research for the talk, I realized that, it came to me in a flash, even though it's obvious, but, you get these kind of insights. And this is where out of this came the idea that, that there is no primitive but a highly conscious nous of the nature of things. And even though you can't, let's say you're not there, you can't see it, it doesn't mean it's not happening.
Right,
It's
of
like
course.
Pluto. You can't see Pluto, but it works,
It
right?
works. It definitely works. Yeah, I think so. The overall impact is going to impact all of us in
Yeah.
some capacity. It's going to affect us, whether or not we actually witness it and see it. It's not as if those who see it are going to be imbued with any special powers or anything like that. It's just the
No,
fact that
no.
you're there. You're in totality. You're going to witness this
Yeah.
phenomenon that
Yeah.
happens very
You're
rarely.
you're participating in it. Yes, and of course the greater world, because we remain privileged in the United States and North America and lots of Europe and so on still, but in the greater world, it's not. It will happen and it will take place and it will affect people in unconscious ways. But we are the privileged, and we are the ones who should be responsible in some way for what the information is.
Right.
And for you and me, you and I, oh God, I'm getting grammatically
That's
weird
okay.
here. Editorial, please call my editor. Yeah, you and I are really lucky, and so is everybody who is listening to this, because, we actually are privileged because in the most historically, in the time of humanity, period of what's going on, this is the most frightening. It is the big turning point that we have been looking toward for a very long time. Now, this is all facilitated in some strange collusion. Nobody set it up. It's just the way it is. It's evolving. And so what happens when we have an eclipse, briefly, is that there has to be a perfect lineup. I mean, a total solar eclipse like this, or a total lunar eclipse, but solar eclipse like ours is coming up, is that you have to have a lineup in the orbit of the Earth and around the sun, and the orbit of the moon around the Earth, and the orbit which includes what's called the north and the south nodes, and they all have to line up perfectly. And when they do, the Earth passes between the moon and the sun, because it's a full moon, in such a way that it obliterates or darkens the sun. So there we have the dark sun, which is the Saturnian side of the solar life force. It powers our entire solar system. The sun is our hearth fire. We gather round as a solar system our hearth fire to give us life and power and energy. When the darkening of that comes, imagine what it was like for people 40,000 years ago. They would have been beating drums and, whipping themselves with, tree branches and, having beautiful fires and, trying to bring the light back and praying and praying and praying. I mean, this is still going on in indigenous cultures, and it should be going on in our culture. And in fact, all these millions and billions of people that will be sitting in that swath across the United States of America, which is terribly important, which we will go to, they will actually be collectively participating consciously. And everybody's totally excited. My son-in-law says, I said, you can't use your welding mask. I said, no, you got to get those glasses. I'm nagging his mother. Anyway, so.
But you know what I find to be, I want to just touch on one point that you mentioned. When we stop and think about the order of the universe, and we do this many times as astrologers, we're always marveling at some of the geometric patterns that happen. When you consider the fact that the moon is 250,000 miles away from us, and it's a fairly small orb, and then we look at that and how it fits precisely over the surface of the sun in exactitude, which is 93 million miles away. That phenomenon to happen.
They arc 3 degrees of the same. Yeah, of the same. They're exactly the same size.
In that view, which I think is just a remarkable. That's no small coincidence. This really speaks to the greater logic of the mathematics of the universe, I think.
Well, you see, this is the intelligence that the universe has for us. And when you say, coincidence, it's actually coincidence, isn't it?
Coincidence,
yes. Because it's a cooperative incident. And that's the word, coincidence. And the thing of it is that this is not a coincidence. This is some kind of intelligence.
Yes.
There's no accident, but some kind of massive intelligence in the Milky Way that this should be occurring, that this is what we have, and that we can actually look ahead now because of computers, thanks to the early guys in the 80s creating these massive computers. We can look forward and backward for hundreds and hundreds for basically future and all past, and never once does the exact configuration of the solar system repeat.
Ever. It's like a gigantic corkscrew that is perpetually moving forward.
I know, and that's why no moment is ever the same, and that's why, but we have cycles. Okay, and so these eclipse cycles are what they call Saros cycles. I've never studied it in depth. It's too big for me. I have to focus on I have to, shut down something. But every 19 years, and I look back to August of, had it in my ephemeris here. I look back to
1998, I guess it was. Yeah.
Yeah, there was 1998. There was a penumbral eclipse of 13 Aquarius. I mean, every 19 years, there is a nodal return, and the nodes are the ones that line us up with the sun and the moon and Earth. And we had, these they occur every sort of 19-ish years. And so this is a repeat of something that actually did occur in August of 1997. And 1998.
1998 was when that would be 19 years ago. But the phenomenon is
that's
there.
Right. Yeah, the annular eclipse. But it was an annular eclipse. Now this just simply means that it's not really that, it's not an exact.
Right.
And it's always preceded by a penumbral eclipse of the moon. And so we've just had an eclipse of the moon, and we now are having the great massive solar eclipse. And in August of 98, that eclipse occurred at 28 Leo 48, and this eclipse occurs at 29 Leo 59, 29 49, around there of Leo. And that eclipse is meaning that the lineup of the sun and the moon and Earth are all in the axis of the very last degree of Leo and Aquarius, which happens to be, just to move into the second sort of phase of this thought, which happens to be the ascendant of Donald Trump. The ascendant is 2959 or something Leo.
Right.
And in my newsletter, I did make a note that in the inauguration horoscope, the transit of the planet Saturn. Remember I said that the eclipse is like the dark sun? Or the,
right, exactly, yep.
What in alchemy is called the Sol Niger, which is like the dark sun when lead is turned into gold and gold is turned back into lead. Well, it's kind of an alchemical situation.
Yeah.
Very, very much so. And so that Donald Trump actually, in the inauguration horoscope, the transit of Saturn was precisely at 21 degrees of Sagittarius on his moon in the fourth house of the party not in power politically, okay? And it was opposite his sun in the 10th house, which is the party in power. So that the 21 degree axis, because he was an eclipse baby too, by the way.
Right.
Yeah.
He was born.
Because whenever you get that, because his nodes are all in the same. Anyway, so he had that. And what will occur on the day of the eclipse will be that the eclipse occurs across his ascendant-descendant, the horizon of his horoscope. And it will be on his ascendant. So his appearance is going to go into, the darkening of the light. Yeah, he will appear to be extremely threatening and foreboding as an ominous kind of thing. Now, I don't like the way the English language or other languages have turned words like omen and prognostication and so on into bad words.
Right.
Omen just simply means indication. Yeah, it's not like a bad thing. It's just it could be really good.
It's a harbinger of some sort.
Harbinger is a beautiful word.
Right. Yeah, it's a harbinger of what's to come. And I think the fact that he is who he is, and he actually, if we're witnessing it right now as we speak, we are witnessing this character you're referring to. in full color.
It's just hilarious. Well, I mean, the American Psychiatric Association has, for the second time, written to all of their, notified every single member of the American Psychiatric Association that they are not allowed to diagnose Trump. Okay, but we can.
Of course,
And
we
so
can.
can psychologists, and so everybody in the whole world can actually analyze him and publish it. But no real psychiatrist is allowed to, or they'll be booted out of the Psychiatric
Well, that's
Association.
got to be some sort of professional thing that they're doing just to be
It is.
polite.
No, no,
It's
well,
out
no,
of.
it's not polite. It's saying if you try and do this, you're not qualified. Nobody asked you to. He did not ask you to be his analyst. Yeah?
Analysts, right? Right.
So we'd have to do it on our own way. And what I was thinking when I first saw this collaboration, if you will, to work together, the planets and also the self, because, all of this stuff would not be relevant if it weren't in relation to an actual event which is taking place.
Right.
And that event is this situation that's arisen in the United States, coincidentally with the eclipse crossing right across the northern states.
Exactly. Very highly unusual. I mean, and this is why astrology, I mean, to me, speaks
Perhaps
so
before.
accurately, because here we are in the midst of this thing. The tension is there. We see this. The sun gets blotted out by the face of the moon, and we have this sort of. I think it's going to be sort of a cultural mass revelation of some sort,
Totally. I do too.
which may, in fact, I think, open the eyes of people who have had their eyes shut, or perhaps have been in denial up to this date. I think is what's going to happen. But that's just,
Well, no, I think you're absolutely right, because the imagery is this, as we watch this through our glasses, or I have a site, there's a site with NASA online where you can watch it in real time. So, just because you can't see it and you're not there doesn't mean it isn't happening. So that, and I've posted it on my Facebook pages, both of them.
Yeah, and another interesting point about this is going to be the first eclipse that is in this part of the world that is going to allow all of us with our
I know.
mobile phones and our measuring devices
Yeah.
to create this collective batch of data about what's happening. NASA is actually requesting people to upload things with like temperature, duration, light quality,
Oh,
how the animals react. They're asking, so they're going to get this enormous wealth
whoa.
of information.
Hey, so isn't that the wonderful? You see, this is why I've never had a hard time with scientists. I mean, when I saw Oppenheimer crying, on August the 9th of August 6, 1945,
Right.
because he never realized that this is exactly what he was doing. I mean, he knew what he was doing. He told Truman. Truman said, that's fine. That's our power. That's our ticket. No, you can't take it away. And then Oppenheimer, immediately the head of, the Manhattan Project that actually developed the
nuclear bomb.
atomic
Right.
bomb, and tested it in Socorro, New Mexico, just down the road from here. And Socorro means succor, like to seek.
To seek aid.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Right.
Well, what it is, it's the end of the road, because if you're walking from El Paso to Socorro, there's no water between those two places.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's quite a heavy place, right? So you see Oppie, I have him on my YouTube pages, but you can just look at and he quotes the Bhagavad Gita saying, "I have become death." And his tears are coming out of his eyes. And he said, many people laughed, many people cried, but everyone knew it would never be the same again.
Right.
And so you see that kind of threat that, we've been under ever since August the 6th of 1945, always potentially there, always in development. That's part of this eclipse, because you see, the whole point of the eclipse is you're looking at the sun, and then you're watching the little crescent, grow smaller and smaller as the moon blackens out the sun, and then it moves, the Earth continues to move, and it starts a reversal of the release of the light. And so in our psyche, this is not an ominous negative omen, it's a positive omen, because it's okay, we're going to take you into the dark, into the participation mystique of the entire collective unconscious, and we are then going to give you the light of what that consciousness is. And so this is probably the most powerful eclipse that has taken place in a long time. I'll just say that.
Well, especially given the history of our country and where we are and our prominence in the world and where we are now to this day in a much different place than we were at one time. This really is
So sad.
a Plutonian sort of tear down and build up again. I think there's a lot of Plutonian threads to this that go with it. And of course, plutonium is in the atomic bomb, which is sort of what we're talking about here. And there's no small coincidence that that is the case. And for a generation of us who have Pluto in Leo, it's going to be a fairly significant time period.
That's exactly right. Because the thing is that we were born, like I was born in November of 1947. And so, I'm definitely one of what they called a baby boomer. And in the mid 60s, we were all out in the streets yelling and hollering. And I say I have got a really good newsletter about this. So if anybody wants to have this inauguration newsletter, they have to email me and then I can just send it.
Yeah. But by the same token, growing up, I'm also a baby boomer myself, and I remember air raids and hiding underneath my desk and all this stuff.
No, same here because I'm actually Canadian,
right?
And I remain Canadian, but I'm here legally. By the way, for everybody to know that I am a legal.
Don't send the vice after her. Don't send the vice.
No, please don't. Half my neighbors aren't, but I'm not talking about them, and I love them. They're wonderful. But at any rate, what you're saying there is that, my daughter was offered, because she's a grant writer, to write a grant on trying to get money for, nuclear war, something about nuclear defense, detecting when there was going to be something. And she's been a scientist before, and she doesn't really want to do it. And I said, well, then don't do it. She says, it's just too depressing. I wish I'd gone into archaeology so I could look at the past instead of like human ecology. And so, but the thing of it is that really is so vastly significant to me, and I think to everyone, is that there is a place in our own horoscopes where we're going to have this eclipse as a transit take place. Now, in my chart, it'll be the 8th house. Now, the thing about what you mentioned about Pluto is really relevant. To keep bringing this up is not out of the talk. Mm-hmm. It's actually very coincident with it because, oh no, my brain.
Well, it's relevant for those of us who grew up with a strong Pluto in Leo. Is what I'm saying.
Oh, well, that's right. Yeah.
There's the connection of that is relevant. That will bode. Has a greater magnitude to it. I mean, I don't want to sound too hyperbolic here about how this impacts us and how it will impact us. We don't ever, all of us, know what's going to happen.
Well, it doesn't, because we're all dying.
Right,
okay?
But it does provide us with a window of what the potential is and how we can best use this in a positive way to sort of resurrect or enlighten something that has been hidden. I think in some ways people are so confused by the presence of this man that we're wondering why have we gotten this place? I read articles all the time: the New York Times, Washington Post, New Yorker, Politico. These magazines.
I read it on every morning. I read the main news like BBC News.
Exactly.
The Guardian
and we see this stuff
on my phone.
Yeah, and we know that this is highly unusual and our place in the world has shifted. And so this may be the opportunity for the United States to say, wow, what have we done? Where are we now? Do we reconsider this as this heat begins to rise? We're at the break time we're at the break time right now. And so let's just take a quick break and we'll come back in a few minutes. Before we do, I want to let everybody know what we're talking about. We're talking with Erin Sullivan today. Her website is erinsullivan.com. That's Erin, Erin Sullivan with 2 L's.com. And she is a remarkable astrologer. She has works within the realm of contemporary astrology, and she is a person who homogulates a bunch of different things, brings everything into a sort of homogeneous, holistic view of the individual and how we interact with the world as individuals based on the instructions that are encoded in our birth chart. So I encourage you to reach out to her and get an accurate reading from her, and you'll be amazed. And we'll be back in about 2.5 minutes, and we'll continue our discussion about the Great American Eclipse, which is right on our heels. So hang in there. I'll be right back. What is your destiny? Where are you going? What is your real purpose? Do you know? Do you want to know? Of course you do. It's your duty to yourself. We are all here for a reason. and we all have great potential. Discover all of this and more with a professional astrology reading. My name is Chris Flisher, and I can help you. Discover your strengths and work on your weaknesses, and live your life to its fullest capacity. Based on your birthday, birthplace, and birth time, an authentic astrology reading will allow you to live your life to the fullest and reveal your true purpose. Only real astrology can give you real information. It is your destiny, and it is your path. Write me at chris@chrisflisher.com and book a reading today, or call me at 978-393-1036. That's 978-393-1036. www.chrisflisher.com.
Astrology is the science of spirit, and it can serve as an invaluable aid in making the difficult choices in life and seeking truth in all the directions we choose. It holds the potential to allow each of us to evolve to our highest potential. It is the logic of the universe, the code of existence, and the pathway to true wisdom. It is our duty to draw from it the instructions for our lives and to live them to our fullest potential. As the great wheel turns, we are best prepared when we are best informed.
As the world shrinks and our barriers come down, diverse cultures are striving for harmony, balance, and peace. To ease the transition, we need to expand with color, light, and tolerance. Now, you can become a global citizen and embrace the color and clear spirit with the divine artwork of the mandala. Mandalas are a timeless artistic offering for creating unity, harmony, and peace. My name is Chris Flisher, and I've spent years creating mandalas, and they are now available online at www.turningofthewheel.com. Come and experience the world of color, form, and function with t-shirts, coffee mugs, note cards, and limited edition prints. These vibrant, lively paintings and products express optimism, oneness, and spiritual balance for all who use them. www.turningofthewheel.com. That's www.turningofthewheel.com. And enter a world of possibility and color. Here we are. We're back again with Erin Sullivan, the one and only, one of the world's greatest astrologers. We're talking today about the Great American Eclipse, which is right on the heels of our country. It's going to be going across the United States, directly across the United States from Portland, all the way down through to Charleston, South Carolina, and it's going to be happening on August 21st. Depending upon where you are, there's a 70-mile wide swath that if you're in the middle of that, you will see complete totality, which is a very rare experience. It's the moon completely covering the surface of the sun in such a way as it obliterates all of the daylight in the middle of the day. So where I'm going to be seeing it in Tennessee, it'll be around 1:30 in the afternoon. All of a sudden, the sky will go dark. The birds will stop singing, and everything will be just amazingly suspended in that moment of time where we're just witnessing this natural phenomena. But there's other archetypal and sort of metaphysical qualities that are embedded in the eclipse as well. And that's why we're talking with Erin about this, as to what she might envision. What does this eclipse provide us, Erin, as a tool? How do we use this eclipse as a tool to better our lives, or at least gain more clarity? How does that work for us?
Well, I'm really glad that you brought in that word, which is often just overused, archetypal, because I am, a contemporary archetypal astrologer and a hardcore scientific astrologer as well. And, we've read retrograde planets. I know my math.
Yeah, you know your math.
Okay, so I'm looking at this as two things, one of which a phenomenon that is in synchrony with circumstances, okay? Because nothing happens alone. And so the circumstances globally, we have to take into consideration of what has been building up toward this, which is another diaspora to the degree that has never been seen before since the sighting of the planet Uranus. So everybody in the world half the world is homeless, okay?
Right.
And so what we're looking at is people who have lost their way, their path. Okay, they're off the ecliptic. They're not in the sync, and the synchrony. And they are in the sync actually. And so, what we can learn from this is that that maybe there's a part of us that got off track. Maybe I myself, because I'm really working on something here. and I'm a Scorpio, and the woman who actually, invented, or sorry, got um, the Nobel Prizes, two of them, for the for her uranium, or sort of radium and polonium,
Right,
which
right,
is
right.
of course one of the contents of. She had, I mean, this is where Marie and Pierre Curie come in very importantly, is that she was a multiple Scorpio with everything opposing Pluto and Taurus, but we didn't know that Pluto existed when she was born. And she had her moon in the sign of uh, uh, sorry, they both had Scorpio sun, and the moon in their composite chart was in Scorpio, and the transit of Pluto, um, and our sighting of it happened, just a couple of years before the woman died. And so, like I say, in being in love with the mystery of that which is invisible is something that we want to take part in. It's okay. It's not superstitious, which is, again, another one of these words like almond, where people think it's a bad thing. And so what we can do is to, accept the fact that even the scientists are saying, look, take note of nature, take note of nature and culture during the darkening of this new, what happens? How long does it take? Really log it so that we can all share both scientific and our emotional and our also observational way of looking at things. So we
And
want to share that.
the idea of returning, as you said, the idea of returning to sort of that primal state, the sort of the state where we are trying to cull something useful from this. I think nature is the place we need to turn. Nature is
Absolutely.
what sustains us. So, but for us to put our energy into that, and we are clearly at odds with nature right now, whether we like it or not. I'm not saying you or
Oh
I are
boy.
personally, but as a
No, no,
collective, we
no,
all
no.
are, because of our
Yeah,
lust for carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide. I think this
well,
gives us an
yeah.
opportunity to sort of take a glance and say, well, this is nature. Nature is talking to us. Nature is saying something to us. And we, not literally, but there is the symbolism is there, the sort of the overarching, arc of history is there. And as you said earlier, we are never going to be in this place again. So we are always on a river that is flowing, and we are on that stream. And yet
Yeah,
things do recur, yes, but they recur in a different place and time. And so it is
I
important to
know.
look
The
back.
context.
It's important to look back. The
Context.
context shifts, right? So we may be living in a parallel universe where things happened like this once before, but it wasn't 2017. It may have been, whatever the
Well,
year was. And so that's the beauty of
yeah,
astrology.
no,
We
our
learn from that.
our disconnection from nature is appalling. And, I think that's where a guy named Morris Berman, who I studied a course with called History of Heresy, wrote a book called Reenchantment of the World.
Hmm.
And I'm looking at my bookshelf. And, the idea of reenchantment of the world is not some kind of new age sort of, you know, whatever the
Yeah,
word is,
no, I know what you mean. I know exactly what you mean. I think everybody else does too. It's sort of that,
sneering
yeah,
new
that's
age.
sort of a holier than thou kind of thing. It's not that.
No, it's not. What it is, it's an opportunity for us to re-engage ourselves as individuals and on the behalf of those who don't have the time because they're digging their babies out of rubble or bombs or whatever,
Right.
to take on the whole collective into our power as very, very intelligent, fortunate, lucky, well-positioned individuals. People, anybody who's going up to see this eclipse are down. I'm sorry, they're privileged, right? So let's hope that I, watching it in real time on NASA, am also going to be putting myself into a primordial, instinctual intelligence. I'm going to go back into my reptile brain, my primal modus operandi, the fear to, and flight syndrome that goes on in us all the time. I mean, my vestigial pelt, as we speak, is actually rippling at this stage because it's so intense what we're going to be experiencing. And so I want people to to, instead of saying, wow, this is really interesting, I want them to actually get into that level. It's only going to last a few minutes, but it will actually, over time, as us individually, because the portent of an eclipse is that it will bring an event. And events for individuals will process how they will come out of, a darkening of an alchemical process of nigredo, of darkness, of blackness, and into the light, the albedo phase of the alchemy, and how we can turn the Saturn, Chronos, into the sun. How do we turn plumbum, lead, into aurum, gold? I mean, that's the whole process. And so when we get this kind of experience, especially because it's the most publicized phenomenon ever. Nobody ever goes on NASA to watch a retrograde planet.
Of course not.
For example. Yeah, I mean,
this has been so widely publicized, and I think the introduction of the fact that we all have cell phones at the same time is ominous in itself. Ominous in itself. It has a great power to it because it's sort of a great connection, even though they may have
it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's got to be really, really powerful experience from the data collection standpoint. It really makes us look more worldly than ever, and yet we seem to be so divisive. I've always held the idea that ever since I was very young, I said the only way we're ever going to stop war on this planet is if something from the outside comes in after us, meaning we get it.
A lot of people have said that. A lot of people have said that, and that's kind of weird because when a lot of people say something, it kind of lets us know that it's in the air, it's in the environment.
It's part of the dialogue, yeah.
Wouldn't that be a trip? Actually, and that's the wonderful prescience of. I mean, because I went through a really intense phase of reading highly intelligent science fiction, and every single one of them predicted exactly the future. And when you told me that said to us 25,000 miles away was the moon, well, in Men in the Moon, H.G. Wells calculated the actual distance from Earth to the moon within 4 feet.
Wow, that is pretty incredible.
Sorry, 4 miles. 4 miles. Now, that's not bad, for a science fiction writer. These guys are amazing. And so they've actually talked a lot about this. Look at Brave New World, the whole thing, Aldous Huxley and his ideas. So we're really looking at what I think is an alchemical process but because it's a process, it's not an event, which is why I don't think they're going to be nuking anybody, but because that's a serious event. It may not be an event. It may be like a 3 or 4 month, because that's how long it'll take for the eclipse to process the length of time that it's in its umbra, which means darkness and shadow. It's 2 hours and 6 minutes, which equivalent to about 2.5 months of time. So in about 2.5 months, we'd want to look and see we would watch our process through that time and see what it is that we did, what we reset, what did we reorganize, what did we reconnect with, under the, relationship that our Earth and ourselves is having with the sun, our solar power, and the moon, our reflective, because you can't stare at the sun without those glasses, right? So the moon reflects it in phases. So, it's the feminine function. So the masculine and the feminine function are absolutely ridiculous right now on the planet. It's horrible. The loss of the feminine, because I want to write this new book, which I'm calling, by the way, as a joke, Hades and His Ladies.
Oh,
yeah?
Yeah,
Like the rise of the
I think
feminine.
that's great, yeah.
I just want to write one more book before I die, and I'll be happy. I'm not dying, so don't worry.
That's good to hear.
I will.
Well,
Yep,
we all have a limited.
Quite exactly, but I'm not. It's not imminent. In fact, if I don't do it, then I'll be really lazy. So I think what we need to do is we need to look at the magic of the precision and the stunning rhythm that we are involved in, and it's triggering off things in us that we can control. Your attitude towards things will make a difference. Like you said in the beginning, in the beginning of our talk was. We have got some influence in, and I'm not big on astral projection and all of that, but the fact is this kind of an omen really does mean that there's got to be intention. We
Well,
have to have intention behind it.
more than anything else, I think what it does. I mean, all that I say, I totally agree with. But I think it's the fact that it is a singular event which will draw the attention of everyone on the planet. That is unlike any other event, especially, well, at least in this country it will draw because there's been such publicity about it. That many eyes all watching one thing has got to put some sort of collective energy behind that, regardless of how you may feel about political persuasions or
quite.
anything else or cultural mores. This is going to bring us, this is, in many ways, this is one of the greatest unifying events we're ever going to see in our lifetime, perhaps, because we are all there at the same time. So how we do this is, how we respond to this is critical, because I think the one takeaway I'd like to see as a collective was that we finally, once and for all, step up our battle with the climate change, and we say, okay, this is our planet, the planet's speaking to us, this is what it's going to be like if things go bad. And then maybe
it's already like that,
of course,
Chris.
Right.
I mean, in my newsletter that I referred to, if people wanted, I actually say, in 1972, we signed the EPA. Do we have to do this all over again? Why are they destroying everything that the 60s boom that we installed and is now being disinstalled? And when it takes me back to the whole concept that every single religion, not spirituality necessarily, but religions, they all say at some point, we are all one. Now that was kind of esoteric, and it still is, because we are. However, but you talk about like the WWW, and the first email was sent in 1969 from Stanford to Berkeley.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely,
I mean, it was, when you think, so, I mean, it was a hell of a time, right? I mean, really, really busy, active, this is what's happening, and we're going to be positive. And now all of a sudden we've reached the nadir of that. And so if the nadir is like midnight, okay? And it also, replicates the idea of the darkening of the sun. And so the IC or the nadir of anything means that it will rise.
Mm-hmm. And I
mean,
do see that. Yeah, I do see that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
In the heroic journey, the hero descends into the belly of the whale, or et cetera, slays many things and dragons and saves the maiden and runs and rises above again to the midheaven. And so when we're at the nadir, I do believe we actually might be in the darkening of our civilization. Sort of like Gandhi said that Western civilization, this sounds like a very good idea. Shame it's not working.
If they would ever get there, right. But I think the fact that this has such a powerful, and it's out of our control. We can't move the moon to a different position. We can't change anything here. And the fact that this is coming across and sort of turning the lights out, I think has a greater undercurrent of wake up, Earthlings. This is a time and place where you guys may have been going too far. We need the lights turned off. If the lights went off in our houses across the globe, we would say, wow, what is wrong? Something is wrong. In this way, this is sort of a metaphorical, the God, was a small g, pulling the light chain and saying, okay, the lights are off. This is what it looks like. How do you like it? How do you survive in the dark? And maybe that's just a subtle reminder of what could happen.
Actually, that's not even very subtle. I mean, my
right.
my vestigial belt rippled as you said that. Because when you said that about when the lights go out, I'm thinking,
right.
Expletive.
That's what
if they go out, that means we're done, because that's what will happen.
Well, maybe it's a sneak preview.
Demeter's revenge for Persephone as an adolescent girl going down and falling in love with the king of the underworld. Her revenge was to turn Earth into permanent winter.
Yes, exactly. I remember that. Yeah.
That is the result of a nuclear bomb.
The nuclear winter. Yeah. So this is, it has and especially
with it will never end.
With the word and the activity on the planet now also being focused in that Plutonian era, and literally the nuclear realm.
We all rose up off the battlefield of World War II, very pissed off.
And we have the most unstable person in the world sitting with his finger on the button. We have to say to ourselves, what have we wrought? What have we wrought upon ourselves? And I read recently that the new Chief of Staff, John Kelly, is trying to set up procedures within the White House to eliminate that possibility from this particular person, which would be comforting because
Really?
it would be a good thing to
Wouldn't
have.
that?
I mean, it just seems like
Yes.
with the words that we're talking about, the fact that Pluto is very prevalent and it's coming into its Pluto return over the next several years for the United States, we've
Well,
got this
well,
person and all this happening
yes.
at the same time. It is rather ominous, is the right word.
It's actually having its Pluto return. You're right,
Yeah,
because it was born with a Sun Pluto conjunction,
right.
and in Cancer,
And
and
we're
Pluto
coming.
is now in Capricorn. It's its Pluto opposition.
Well, no, it is, but it's going to be coming up over the next several years. We're going to have what's called a Pluto return, as I understand it. And
Oh, from the cycle, yeah, the
yes,
245 years.
248,
Yes,
which
absolutely.
would mean an
That's
indication
fine.
of an empire sort of crumbling and then rebuilding. This may be an opportunity for us to really get a glimpse of what that might look like, and how do we recover from this? Is this a swing of the pendulum? So it's so far in one direction that the only direction it can go is back the other way. Is that if we reach the sort of the bottom, and this is from this bottom we then rise? Are we already seeing the
Well,
bottom?
that's like being at the nadir,
Right.
is where you slay the dragon, save the maiden, enter the family dynamic, reorganize your entire integrity, and be very positive about what your intentions are, because
Hmm.
intentionality does work.
Oh, it certainly
Um,
does. You've got to be well intended, and
you
you can
know,
see it in people who are. People who are well intended get back what they give out. I believe. I think this is what,
they seem to.
and I think those who
I
are
mean,
not well
even though
intended.
it might not be obvious what they get back, but they get it back in spirit
Yes.
and in their participation,
Hmm.
in the collective in a giving way. They feel really well. I mean, like a good realtor is a great person, right?
Right. Yeah.
Their integrity, they will get the right house for the right person, they negotiate, they have a wonderful life, and they get lots of good feedback, including of money. So there's millions and millions of ways of being good, being a well-intentioned individual.
Hmm.
My intentions, of course, as we're sharing the similar intentions, is that I want to bring to people a vision of themselves that they may never have had before ever in their lives, and that will free them from their neurosis and their complexes, to the degree that they're able to work better as an individual, as a human being. This is an eclipse of the entire world. Yes, it earmarks the United States for attention. It's sort of like the distant early. Remember the dew line?
Yeah.
Yeah, we were kids, like under the task but the distant early warning and strontium 90, that was the beginning of awareness of environmental discord, that we were no longer in participación mystique. We were in separación
Right. Exactly.
mystique.
Exactly. And the interesting thing you raise about the EPA and that being tied to our generation, it was Nixon that put that in place, believe it or not, and yet
I know.
and here we have a
Yes.
person who was there. People are talking about the parallels to Nixon, and here he is going just the opposite direction.
Well,
I
I'm
think
sure
these are
he,
major warning bells that are going off, and I think it's going to allow
well,
people in the world, in
the,
the country in particular, to recognize this and respond accordingly.
Well, the quote about fire and fury and power, that actually is almost a verbatim from Truman, because it was Truman who was the one who banished Oppenheimer,
Hmm.
he spent the rest of his life after the Manhattan Project ended, and the test took place in Socorro, riding his horses back and forth up from his cabin in the Sandias all the way up to Taos, back and forth. And that's where he lived and died. And his daughter would come every so often. And and one of his daughters committed suicide. Anybody involved in anything that horrible never gets over it,
No,
never
no.
gets
As
well.
a matter of fact, the
You see,
person on the person who dropped the bomb from the Enola Gay as they
oh,
flew over, they had this very similar situation, because you have to stop and ask yourself, if my simple hand moving that trigger, whatever it was the one that
I know.
wrought this, even though I didn't invent it. That poor guy, he's being ordered to do this. How does he rationalize this in his head after all these lives have been lost?
He couldn't,
He
he
couldn't.
hasn't.
Yeah.
There's been discussion about this guy, about how he just, I mean, the guilt and the
Can't
horror,
handle it.
the
Right.
horror. It's just like, the Heart of Darkness, the novel,
Right. Oh, James
and
Conrad.
yeah, and he's lying there at the end going, the horror, Yeah, fabulous, absolutely brilliant. Although, we don't want to end on a dark note.
No, we
Though the
don't.
sun is going to be dark for a couple of
But I
minutes,
think that we have to. I think that the fact that this is going to
but
is
we have
going
to be
to.
real.
We have to
We
be
have to be
real.
real.
We have to be realistic, and we have to be
Yeah, yeah,
pragmatic in our response to this. I think it's a great
right,
opportunity to recognize that we are much smaller than we envision we are, and we are much less in control than we think we are. That the universe really is in charge of us and what's going to be
right.
happening to us. And so, therefore, we need to pay homage to this great thing and take something out of it in a positive way. As you said, to be well intended is our intention. That is our goal:
Well,
is to
that is it.
reap something good
Yeah.
from this
Yeah, I mean,
time.
like putting your head in the sand doesn't work. You get poked in the behind.
Hmm.
And so therefore it's important for us to actually say, okay, all right, I can listen to this. I can hear this information as information. This is information. What I do, what I am being informed of is what is up to me what I do with it.
Right.
And I don't, I myself being, a Scorpio and, always being in love with the mystery, I'm never afraid to look at the darkness that is always occurring in a cyclic fashion. It's nighttime,
Yeah,
okay?
it's there, and
People go to sleep,
it's
and it's
there
daytime, and then you
exactly.
get stuff done. So that's what this is, and we are happening to be in a nighttime period in our global situation because it's not just about the United States. The United States is sadly has lost its incredibly wonderful status as a leader and as an example. And when I was in Rio in 1996 giving lectures, I asked them, I said, tell me what you think about the U.S. And they said, a few people, they said, we're really sad because now we don't have an example.
Mm.
And I went, oh, God, I never even thought of it that way.
Hmm. Well, we
Yeah,
served as well. We were the great experiment. We still are the great experiment. We were the
yeah,
nation where we put
no,
everybody into the
that,
same pot and we stirred it up and we saw what we got. And I
that
think we've
that's
made
why
great progress. I don't feel bad about where we are. I mean, I feel bad about where we are today, but I think overall, as you look back at the arc of history, we have created the great society. I think we will rise to that occasion once again. I think we're in a
yeah,
temporary blip. I think this is actually an effort in some sort of odd way to show us what we possibly could do that's wrong. This is a very visceral example of what goes wrong if you don't go out and vote and pay attention. This is what happens to you when you don't go out and vote. So what
yeah,
do you do next time this
yeah.
comes around? You vote.
Yeah, no, I would.
If this
All my kids certainly
yeah
voted, and
if
they
this had
voted.
been a
I
if
told them to vote. Wavy Gravy always says, "Vote early and vote often."
vote early and vote often, exactly. But if you don't,
we're
if you
we're at our
if
50th reunion.
if the rest of the people had not voted, the rest of the people, if they had voted, we would be in a much different state right now. So this is
I,
a wake up call as well in that regard. It's like
a
be
lot of
active,
people had
be
a
present.
jerk reaction to what looked like, and very much was, a highly, uh, financially orientated culture, which it had become. And I guess, the opposition was sort of looking like the sort of quote PIGS, the cojones of the two sides.
Hmm.
And it's unfortunate because there's only two parties, right?
Right.
It's not like there's a plethora of them, like in in parliamentary procedure, for example. It's very different, and yet we still had Brexit. Brexit, 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 horrible. So I call this "you sex it."
Yeah. No, I
um,
see that. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
So
And it
I
is
mean,
sort of a we have.
everybody's in and up. Look,
Yeah.
Europe. I mean, look at everything. It's not just about the United States of America. Cannot control all of this stuff. They could certainly act as a decent example.
Yeah. No, and I think we have
And I
done that.
think
But
that's
right now, we sort of just erased all of that with this current iteration of where we are. The sense of
well,
decorum, the sense of manners, the sense of the weight of the office has totally disappeared. It's just not
well,
there.
it's like my father said in the 50s. He was a doctor, and it was very funny. And he had a Moon Uranus conjunction in in Aquarius, and he's Scorpio rising. And he says, "Mankind is educated beyond its intelligence." And I'm
That's
like,
great.
and my dad was hilarious.
That's great.
And
But
I went,
I
wow.
think we want to end this on a positive note. I think we need to use this as an opportunity to see the light, because I think the light is being obscured for a reason. What we see in its absence is a reflection on ourselves as a collective society, as a species on this planet. and we need to resolve it in a positive way, use the energy to make something good happen in everyone's lives so that we can turn this runaway train around, is what I would say. So,
Well, I really feel a lot about this, Chris, and that's that my entire intention in my work with individuals, with clients, is to give them a picture of who they are in a way which they may never have seen before.
right.
To give them the courage to actually to move that step forward, because very few people, phone and make an appointment at MIV to just sort of have a little natter. They want, they want what I give, and that's what I do, and it's about helping people get through the dark night of the soul. And I think that's what we're going through as a world. Our whole world is in the dark night of the soul.
Yeah.
And that's a very important cleansing time period when you go through that, because in any Jungian, say, ideology, because it is a form of ideology, in any Jungian way, it's always about exploring the depths and the darkness that lurks in the soul. And I'm always reminded of my old friend and Jim Lewis, the astrocartography inventor. Jim Lewis, as a lecturer, was one of the most brilliant. And at one point he said, when you talk about getting into the psyche, he says it's like going inside a huge, vast, eternal cave with a pen light and putting it around. You never get to see the whole thing. You can only see a quarter of an inch of it at a time.
Right.
And I thought, wow, that's a great image.
It's like the idea of the blind men all walking up to an elephant, and one man says it's a tree, another man says it's something else, and because they're all touching the same animal, but they're touching different parts of the animal. It's sort of similar to that. Well, Erin, it has been wonderful to have you on today. Unfortunately, we ran out of time, and I knew this was going to happen like this because we love to chat about these great topics.
Oh, we're crazy when it gets down to talking.
They keep us going, and but it's been great. My guest today has been Erin Sullivan. Her website is erinsullivan.com. That's ERIN, as in Erin, and then Sullivan, SULLIVAN. Great astrologer. Written a number of great books that are well worth. If you have any interest in astrology and you want to understand more about it, I encourage you to read her books, which are available from her website as well as on all the other book places that you can find them. I really encourage you to reach out to her, because she is a vast vessel of information about astrology and the workings of the cosmos. And it's always a delight to have you on, Erin. Thank you so much for coming on today to talk about this great thing. Let's not be fearful. Let's be bold and brave and find a new way.
Yes. Boldly we shall go.
Yes, that's
and,
it.
And that's, any clientele will receive that kind of courage. And so, that's what I do. That's what I do.
Thank you so much
and
for coming on
today. And thank you.
It's
wonderful.
Thank you.
All right, Chris.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Turning of the Wheel with your host, Chris Flisher. To schedule a reading with me or to order artwork, you may visit my website at www.turningofthewheel.com. That's www.turningofthewheel.com. Or you can call me at 978-393-1036. Thank you. And as always, be open to possibilities.